Hey everyone, welcome. We are on day 3 of the Balance Riding Course workshop, and this morning we just put out part 3 of the main teachings in the workshop. We put out part 2 of the main teachings, and in this second part we're focusing on more horse behavior, the training element, the communication element, and kind of 2 pieces to it. The first is breaking down the myth of needing to be the boss, needing to be dominating over the horse, needing to put the horse in a fearful state in order to have control or to be effective in training, even needing for the horse to respect us, and even needing to be the leader of the horse. So in part 2 of the workshop training, I go into the science that really dispels this myth of be the boss. And then I introduce you to a little mare that was in training at the farm. And we work on one specific thing, one problem that this little horse had, which was standing still at the mounting block. She liked to do that walk up, spin the butt out, so that the rider couldn't get on at the mounting block. And that behavior is something that it can be so common, and with her it was such a great example of she wasn't doing it to be naughty, to be bad, to play tricks on anyone. She was doing it because she was uncomfortable, and not uncomfortable in a eyes rolled back, snorting fear kind of way, but just a deep tension and uncertainty that she always had around riding. So that would show up every time she went to the block. Is she learned that behavior then to just delay the riding process and delay the mounting. So you'll see in that, again, part 2 of the workshop, how I work with her in just 5 minutes and just really simply go step by step to help her become a bit more comfortable with just that one thing, which is standing there at the block. And when we can take that concept of really looking for success, looking for wins in the smallest things and breaking it down, we can have so much more success. So I've jumped right in here to what was released in the workshop and what we're going to be doing. But first, I want to welcome everyone that's coming on. I see Debbie's here, Denise, and Michael's. Thank you guys so much for coming on. Thank you for everyone that has been going through the workshop. And what I would love to start with, because in this video, so here in this daily live video, we're doing a guided exercise together. And in today's guided exercise, we're going to be talking about using your environment. So I titled this, Be Clever, Be Clever and Use Your Environment. And the place that we're working with our horse, the place that we're training, is so important to our success and to our horse's success. So that's why I wanted to focus today's video on understanding that and then going through a little exercise to apply to you and your horse. So a really simple question for those of you that are watching live that can type this in: where do you typically do most with your horse? Are you riding in an outdoor arena? Are you going right out on trails? Do you have maybe a field, like a flat spot in a field that you tend to work in? A round pen, indoor arena? Just let me know where you typically work, because that can actually help guide the discussion, and that's going to be kind of the first part of our exercise, is thinking about what are the different environments that we work in. So Terry said in the pastures. Amazing. One of the things we're going to go over in this video, once we go to the exercise, is understanding that we can make really good use of wherever we're working. Where I live right now, I have no access to arenas. I work mostly, there's not even a lot of really flat spots in the fields, so I mostly take my horse Canelo out of the field, and we've got some lanes that the lanes are wide enough that we can work there. So when I want to work training exercises that I'm working circles and working more of those kind of patterns, I'm working on those lanes and having to get creative, being really aware of footing, etc., to be able to do that work there. Okay, Anne said pasture and also has a 60 by 60 square arena. Awesome. Good, so just keep putting that in the comments. Again, if you're just jumping in, putting in where you typically work with your horse or where you're typically riding. Before we get into this environment discussion, part of what I want to do with these live videos each day is answer your questions. And we had a few questions come in from the first part of the workshop, which was focused on the riding position. And we had a few questions come in with different variations of things like I have, scoliosis. So I'm not able to sit straight. I'm not able to get in the riding position that my instructor wants me to be in. Or I've had an injury and my right leg is, more developed and has a lot more range of motion from the hip than the left leg. So there were several different questions that basically all were around variations in the body, and specifically when there's, say, injuries or there are things that that make everyone's body unique and less ideal and symmetrical. And here's what I really want to stress, what's so important to me for riders to understand, and the way that I teach riding, is that when we're not looking to ride to an ideal, we can be really centered, really, really balanced, and really effective riders. And we don't have to have the perfect body or be in a perfect position in order to do that. Because when we find the alignment and we find that keeping the balance centered, keeping our weight centered, whether your spine is straight, whether your spine has more natural curve, whether you've had an injury that gives you something that's really asymmetrical, if you can find your weight even, you can still be really centered and you can still be really balanced. So you find the alignment that works well for you, and from that, then you learn to move, maintaining that alignment, maintaining that posture. So again, it's not about finding this certain position and then holding that, but it's about finding alignment, finding balance, finding where you're centered and moving. Now we started that in the first video just at a standstill so that you can start to feel, okay, if I shift here, if I shift here, if you have your friend do those kinds of pressures like pulling on the reins or pushing on the back, like I was doing with the rider in that first part, then you can start to test yourself, and really find that alignment and feel that centered position for yourself. But that's what we're looking to work towards, is finding what is best for you, not working to some ideal. And that's also why the way that I teach goes across disciplines. Because I myself, when people ask me what discipline I ride, I usually just like to say I ride horses. Because the truth is, I enjoy so many disciplines, and I have worked in so many disciplines throughout my life with horses and even through my professional career. I've done everything from, I started riding bareback. Actually, my first horse I didn't even have a saddle for the first few months. So I started bareback, then went into Western. I learned a little bit of roping, a little bit of team penning, doing some kind of practical cattle working things when I was a kid growing up with horses, and then really loved to jump. So I went into jumpers, did some hunt seat, some hunters, show dressage, especially as I was training, and have studied classical dressage, did some showing in low-level eventing, and have been lucky to ride now in many places around the world, like in Mongolia, where I went there to ride the Mongol Derby this past summer, where I've gotten to experience many different disciplines, many different cultures around horses and riding. So the way that I love to teach my riders, my students, is really with that solid foundation that you can go and you can do anything. Everything has its specialty, of course, as you get higher and higher up, but the foundation of good riding goes across all of those activities. It's about knowing your body, knowing your balance, and being able to move with the horse. Okay, so that was the main question that I wanted to address from the first part of our workshop together. And actually, one more thing that I want to share there, because a lot of people see me riding, and I am athletic, and I have been, lucky enough to have been riding as a kid, but my body is not perfect or symmetrical either. So I had an accident when I was 13. My muscle on my left leg, my calf muscle, was crushed. And because of that, I have about 2 inches less range of motion in my left ankle than I do in my right. I've got so much scar tissue that's remained in that calf muscle that I just don't have the range of motion. And does it affect my riding in a big way? No. Is it something that I've been really aware of and work to be more symmetrical, work to make sure that I'm not, say, giving a stronger leg aid on one side than the other? Yes. But am I still able to ride really well? Yes. I've also had some back injuries, several back injuries, that have made me not so straight either. And it's something that I work towards being more and more symmetrical, work towards an awareness of my body, but I can still ride really centered, really balanced, and really well, even having these asymmetries in my body too. So if that's helpful, just to understand that I really do, this is something that's so passionate for me, because all of our bodies are unique and different. And when we try to push ourselves into this, pull your shoulders back, stick your chest out, push your heels down, it only is frustrating, can actually be damaging to our bodies because of all the tension, and it's really uncomfortable for the horse too. Okay, so let's get into the exercise for today. I want to start with giving you 3 main points to remember when it comes to using your environment. So the first principle is that whenever we are teaching something new to our horse, we always want to start in the easiest environment possible. That means somewhere where the horse is really comfortable, where there's not a lot of distractions, and where it's generally pretty controlled, meaning we kind of know what's going to happen there. So we always start teaching something when the horse is in the easiest possible environment. Okay, that's the first principle. The second principle is that if something that our horse is doing, if a behavior starts to fall apart, so let's say, I'll give you a specific example of this one. You are schooling your dressage test really successfully at home. You've got great transitions. You go to the dressage show, and all of a sudden your transitions are not going so well. You ask for it, your horse is getting hollow. He's, running forward into the canter instead of having a nice smooth transition, for example. The best place to school that is to go to where you've got your easy environment and school there. So this means in this example, the best place to reschool those canter transitions is going to be first going to maybe a quieter spot on the showgrounds, or even just putting that, tabling that until you're back home to school it, and then come back up to the show again. So anytime that we have a behavior from our horse that starts getting worse, or that we ask for it somewhere and then we're somewhere else, we can do it in the arena but we're on the trail and we can't, you want to move to a slightly easier environment in order to get the behavior back, to get it consistent. The reason for this is so many people, I find, will teach the horse and have the horse performing really well in easy environments, but then they jump right to difficult environments, right into the horse show, right into the big trail ride with 20 other riders, and they get frustrated because they said, my horse is doing this at home, he knows this, he knows what to do, and now he's just being bad. Many times that's not the case. They're not being bad, but they're just overwhelmed by the distraction and they're in a state of anxiety. They've got too much external stimulus to process. Remember yesterday we went through that exercise in understanding how horses sense the world. And I had you kind of go through an imagination of being your horse and having that stimulus. Now think about if you had that in a new environment where it was increased and then you were having to perform at the same level. It would be difficult to perform at the same level. This is one of the reasons for those that horse show, you always are schooling at a higher level at home than you are when you go out and show. So if you're a jumper rider, you're jumping bigger fences and more difficult courses at home, and then you're going and dropping that down and doing easier courses, doing lower level jumps when you're at the show. Same with the dressage test. If you are schooling at one level at home, then you want to go out and actually be showing below what your capability is. Okay, so that was principle number 1 is always teach new things in easy environments. Principle number 2 is if things start to go wrong, go back to your easier environment. Principle number 3 is that novel can become normal. What this means is that the more variety that we constantly bring to our horse's environment, the more that they can be accustomed to new and novel things, to more kind of challenging or distracting environments, and the more that that novelty can be normal for them. I'm going to use my horse Canelo as an example again. So Canelo grew up here in rural southern Mexico. I don't know his background of how he was trained. And I'm not saying that he was necessarily trained in the most kind way. A lot of the training here is pretty rough. But he had a lot of stimulus. You know, even the place that I bought him from, he was tied. It's one of the unfortunate things. They often keep horses tied to trees. He was tied to a tree close to a busy road. There was lots of different things going by on that road. There was lots of different activity around the place where he was kept. And Canelo is a very difficult horse to scare, meaning there's not a whole lot that bothers him. When I ride also, I often will cross busy roads. I ride through towns. Riding here through a town means encountering dogs that come rushing out barking. It means encountering loud music. It means, if riding on weekends, often encountering firecrackers that are being set off, traffic with all kinds of things hanging off of the back, rattling around. So my horse Canelo has had lots and lots of novel stimulus, and because he's had so much of it and he still has it so consistently, the novel is pretty normal. So there's not a lot that is really that new to him that it scares him. The other day we were riding and we had to go past it was a narrow trail where they're building a new bridge on this rural road, and we had to go past a cement mixer with a line of like 10 people that had this like assembly line of, you know, cracking up the cement bags, passing them along, dumping them in, someone putting the water in, lots of activity and lots of sound from the cement mixer. It was the first thing that it took us maybe 5 minutes of watching it and slowly moving forward before he would go by. Most times, even something like that, he goes right past it. So you might say, okay, well, I don't know if I want to go out and expose my horse to all this kind of stuff. Or you might say, okay, well, it's actually pretty quiet where I live, but you can still do different things. Go in and hang that raincoat on the fence. Ride, you know, if you ride a trail and you typically go one direction, go the other direction. If you're normally riding in an arena, end with a hand walk out around the fields before you come back in. Just continually do things that are a bit novel, that are out of routine, that are different, because it'll help your horse to adapt more. Okay, so So those were our 3 principles, just a bit of background information. Now we're going to go through an exercise together to help you apply this to you and your horse. So ideally, grab a piece of paper. If you are somewhere driving or whatever that you can't write it down right now, write it down later because it'll be a really good resource to have. And what I'm going to ask you to do first is just to spend a few moments thinking of and writing. You can also put this in the comments too, because it'll help with ideas for everyone else. Write down all the different environments that you work in. So earlier you said the one that was most common for you, but now think about all the different ones. And not even just riding, but you have maybe your horse's stall or your horse's pasture. You have maybe your arena, maybe if you're riding in fields, even thinking about, okay, they're more comfortable in the southern part of the field. The northern part of the field has that spooky corner. So thinking about kind of the different environments that you work in, and can you rate those in easiest to most challenging? So easiest is typically where your horse is most comfortable. This can be where they spend most of their time, where they're eating. It's where they're most comfortable. It also tends to be the most predictable. And then when we get down to the more challenging environments, these are the ones that often are busier. They might have more distraction. They might be more unpredictable. For example, if you're going out on trail, you don't know if a deer is going to jump out, or you don't know if you're crossing a road, what kind of traffic's going to be passing you there. So think about the environment in terms of where's the horse most comfortable and what is the most predictable environment. Those are your easiest ones. And then your more challenging environments are the ones that are unpredictable. You don't know what's going to come up and what's going to happen there. And generally they probably have more going on. And they're probably environments that your horse doesn't spend a lot of time in. Okay, so just take a few moments and map those out. And again, if you're able to put it in the comments, put that in the comments too. And again, welcome to everyone that is just popping on here live. Good to see you. We're just going through the exercise part. We went through some Q&A. We did a little bit of background information on understanding the role of environment, and now we're doing the exercise. Okay, so now you have your list of the different environments that you're in. Excellent. Terry just put hers in: pastures, along the road with 18-wheelers and motorcycles. So that's a great example of probably one of the more difficult environments. Trails in woods, parks, clinics. Excellent. Yeah, this is exactly the kind of list that you want to create. And then thinking of, if you number them, starting with this is easiest, this is most challenging. And then what I want you to do next is think of something that is currently either a new thing that you're teaching your horse, and this can be something new riding. Maybe you're working on canter transitions, maybe you're working on leg yields. Maybe it is something that isn't ridden. Maybe you're wanting to teach your horse some fun tricks. Maybe you're working on lunging. Whatever it is, it's either something new that you are working on, or it can be something that is kind of a problem right now. And a problem might be, honestly, it could be any of the ones that I mentioned before, but a problem could be even something like spraying with a fly spray. Your horse won't stand still for fly spray, or that he won't stand still for the mounting block, like we worked with the little horse in part 2 of the workshop training today. Anything like that. So write down just one thing, a new thing or a problem behavior. And then I want you to think about where you're currently doing most of your work with that thing. And is there a way that you could make the environment just a bit easier? If it's been challenging, or if it's something new, you want to help your horse learn it a little bit more easily, can you find an environment that's a bit easier? And you can get creative here, because even the same environment, so let's say you have an arena at a boarding stable. Maybe that arena is actually quite a challenging environment at 5:30 when everyone's off work and just arriving to ride their horse, but at 7 a.m. when it's really quiet and no one's there, it's actually a quite easy environment. So you can see how you can think about this even more than just, arena. It can be the arena at 7 a.m. could be a very different place than the arena at 5 p.m. So how can you make your environment a bit easier to work through this challenge or to teach this new behavior? And once you've got some more repetition, some really good understanding for your horse, some value for that behavior in the easier environment, then you can take it up to the next difficult one. Then you're riding in your arena at 5 when it's busier, or then you're taking it out, maybe not on the scary part of the trail where the 18-wheelers pass, but you are taking it to the trail that's just, in sight of the barn, that, just goes out and comes back, something like that. So think again of all your environments, when and which ones are challenging and easy for your horse, what you're working on, and how you can start to have more success with working through problems or helping your horse understand new things by using the environment to your advantage. And then remember too, that third principle of novel can become normal, because this isn't about just make it really easy. This is about being clever and make it easy to work through problems and to learn, but then go out and challenge and keep things really interesting. Keep your horse used to variety, so that they're more able to handle lots of different situations. So I see we have some really good comments coming in. I apologize, they're going by too fast that I can read them all here as we're live. But as soon as we sign off, I will go back in, I'll read those. If there's any questions, I'll answer them for you in the comments. And I will see you back here, same time, tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern. And make sure that you jump in and watch part 2 of the workshop that's available now. And part 3 will be available on Friday. So thank you everyone so much for joining me here. I'll see you soon.